Dinosaurs. The terrible lizards. They mysteriously died out 65 million years ago. Or did they?
So I feel like every kid that grew up in the 80s and 90s has a similar experience, where they have vague memories of certain VHS tapes that they would watch as a kid. And this scene that we're watching right now is one of those for me. This was a vague memory until just a couple weeks ago when I finally tracked down the VHS that this belongs to. It's actually part of two VHSs that I used to watch all the freaking time when I was a kid, because like many kids of the 20th century, I was freaking obsessed with dinosaurs, and that obsession went hard. One of my favorite books growing up was Dinosaur Dream by Dennis Nolan. You know, Dennis Nolan was an illustrator, so there's some like really incredible art that I remember just spending hours poring over. On top of that, I was also a really big fan of the Michael Jacobs show, Dinosaurs. So I watched that quite a bit, even though, you know, as a kid, I found that show to be wildly irresponsible.
Sinclair, entree with the entree.
Okay, you guys, get back in the box. Come on, watch your head.
Hurry up, Sinclair. I'm salivating all over my desk.
A Styracosaurus eating any kind of meat, I mean, that's just, it's frankly libel, in my opinion. Or, I guess, slander? No, libel. I guess that would count as libel. Absolutely ridiculous. Also, they call this Styracosaurus a Triceratops throughout the show, which, come on. And this was really upsetting to me because, as a kid, Triceratops was like my favorite dinosaur. Incidentally, the Triceratops would be supplanted as my favorite dinosaur in the mid-90s. So let's play a little fun game, see if you can guess what this dinosaur is. So it's a dromaeosaur. Ooh, that was bad. I think what I meant to say was dromaeosaur, which is the family of dinosaurs that raptors fall into. You know, Velociraptor, Deinonychus, all those kinds of dinosaurs, right? Now, you may remember in Jurassic Park, Dr. Alan Grant scares the ever-living shit out of a little kid with a Velociraptor claw, right? But that claw is way too big for a Velociraptor. The Velociraptor's killing claw was actually about this big. Tiny little thing. I mean, the Velociraptor was about the size of a turkey. Incidentally, in the book, it turns out that Dr. Grant had discovered a new species of Velociraptor, and that's why they're so big. But really, it's just because Michael Crichton had originally gone with Deinonychus, but then realized that Deinonychus doesn't really sound all that intimidating, while Velociraptor does. Now, my favorite dinosaur, the one that was named in 1993, it is a raptor, but this is its killing claw. So you could see that's quite a bit bigger. It lived in the western United States. It's actually one of the earlier species of raptors in the fossil record, appearing sometime around 135 million years ago, so sort of the earlier part of the Cretaceous period. Can you guess what it is? I'm going to give you 5 seconds here to guess what it is. That's right, it is the Utah raptor. That is my favorite dinosaur. In no small part because I grew up in Utah. The two videotapes that we're talking about today, I'm really excited. The two videotapes that we're watching today are the two videotapes that kicked off my love for the Dinosauria clade. And that is More Dinosaurs and Dinosaurs, Dinosaurs, Dinosaurs. I think there's also a third tape called Son of Dinosaurs, but that one we never owned, and the Blockbuster by my house only ever rarely had it, so I only saw it like a couple times. Now, I've done a little digging, it's a little paleontology humor, on these two videotapes, and here's what I've come up with. Near as I can tell, these were created specifically for the Disney Channel by Midwich Entertainment. These two videos are hosted by Gary Owens and Eric Boardman. Gary Owens is probably most widely known for hosting Laugh-In, which was like a sketch show that went through the 60s, I think, into the 70s. He was known as sort of the announcer on Laugh-In, and he was known for his trademark, like holding his hand over his right ear, like old school radio announcers in the 20s and 30s. That's actually pretty fitting, because Gary Owens would go on to be a DJ for the LA radio station KMPC. He's actually pretty well beloved by the people of LA. He was an absolute consummate professional.
Christmas means many things to many people. To some, Christmas means glittering lights, gaily wrapped gifts. That's right, sounds of laughter and good cheer. To the folks at Preparation H, it means a time to pause for a few moments to
Gary has this like incredible baritone voice that is absolutely perfect for narrating any sort of documentary. And then there's his co-host, Eric Boardman. He's most well known for really kind of these tapes. He's also done a few infomercials, and he was a host on the hit Food Network show Calling All Cooks. So, it was good. So, without any further ado, let's jump into the first video, More Dinosaurs. Now, More Dinosaurs begins with Eric Boardman coming to what I think is supposed to be Gary Owen's house, looking for Gary. I'm sorry, right off the bat we have to stop and talk about the music in this show. Composed by David Spear, who also did the score for Ghostbusters, the music is absolutely incredible. Now, this scene in particular, what I love about the music is it does such a good job of communicating sort of the sense of mystery, but it also communicates the sense of majesty of these creatures that we're going to be talking about, these creatures that perished so long ago. You can feel how incredible these creatures were, and yet there's so much mystery that surrounds them because we're so far removed from them in time. It's so good. It gets you stoked and gets you excited for whatever adventure is coming around the corner. Now, eventually Eric finds Gary, right? And Gary confirms that yes, the show is indeed going to be about dinosaurs, and that
I need more dinosaurs.
Hence the name More Dinosaurs. So Eric dons a somewhat questionable cosplay and heads out on an adventure to find more dinosaurs. And here we go into one of the best intros ever. Now, I love this intro because it features art from William Stout, and we're going to see a lot of art from William Stout throughout these two VHS tapes. What I love about his illustrations is, on the one hand, I feel like there's a sense of how dinosaurs were viewed before the 1960s, before the dinosaur renaissance happened. You know, when we started looking at dinosaurs not as cold-blooded reptiles, but as warm-blooded dynamic creatures. So you get a little bit of that, but there's also still correct postures. It's a good mix and represents a lot of where the thinking on dinosaurs was when I was a young kid, because to the layman in the 80s and the early 90s, we were still kind of looking at dinosaurs as more cold-blooded creatures, more akin to lizards than to birds, as we would later discover. And then we cut to what I opened this video with, an awesome stop motion sequence. There is something about stop motion that itches something in my brain that nothing else can. I think it's the tactility of what's on the screen. Chef's kiss. What a perfect way to get a kid's attention, you know? You've got a sense of mystery, you've got a sense of adventure, you've got some freaking sick illustrations, you got a freaking sick stop motion opening, so kids are hooked. So I'm really excited to see what are we going to learn first about dinosaurs. What scientific facts are we going to discover first?
Membi. That's what the African natives call it. Now, I don't know about a dinosaur living in the city. Well, I know in the Congo Basin, they say there's something incredibly strange and large out there. They call it Membi. That means a creature that can block the flow of rivers.
Membi? The cryptid in Africa? You know, it's a bold choice, starting your educational documentary with something that is complete and utter bullshit, but whatever. Let's see what they have to say.
Natives who had seen it before assured us that it was the animal they call Membi, which looks very much like a sauropod dinosaur. And we estimated the overall length of the animal that we saw to be somewhere around 35 feet.
This is the photograph Rogoosters took of the animal.
You know, what is it about Bigfoot and the Loch Ness Monster and Membe? Do they have some power to just, like, destroy cameras and make it so that all you can get is shitty pictures? I don't get it.
I don't know. I mean, we'd all like to believe that maybe one lone dinosaur survived these millions of years, but I gotta see it to believe it. But luckily, there is one way for us dinosaur lovers to enjoy the world of dinosaurs.
Oh! Did you see that? Oh my gosh! Oh, that bird has the best timing of any creature that has ever lived. That was so freaking perfect. I love it. Oh, I gotta see it to believe it, seeing a living dinosaur. For those of you who maybe don't know, which is okay, birds are now officially considered part of the Dinosauria clade. They are living dinosaurs. Basically, they split off of dinosaurs in the Jurassic period. They are part of the Dinosauria clade. So for that bird to just, oh, gosh, that was perfect. Just no notes.
There is one way for us dinosaur lovers to enjoy the world of dinosaurs, and that's the movies. Felt like these scenes from Baby, Secret of the Lost Legend, where explorers actually find a living dinosaur in deepest, darkest Africa.
Filmmakers have always been intrigued in finding ways to bring dinosaurs to life on the screen.
So anyways, after talking about that complete bullshit, they decide to start talking about some movies. The first movie that they start talking about is Baby, Secret of the Lost Legend, which was a movie made by Walt Disney Pictures. So I could see Walt Disney Pictures, if they're working with Midwich Entertainment, maybe they wanted them to talk about this movie. So maybe that's why they decided to talk about Membe, because apparently in this story, there's like a family of sauropods that are discovered in Africa. I don't know. I've never seen this movie. I remember looking at this as a kid and thinking, wow, that looks really cool. I mean, that's some pretty impressive animatronics, right? But maybe there weren't any rental stores around that had it, but I never saw this movie. I still haven't seen this movie. Let me know if you have. Is it any good? Let me know.
The first feature film about dinosaurs was The Lost World. It tells of a group of explorers that find an isolated plateau in Brazil that evolution had passed by. The story was written by Sherlock Holmes creator Sir Arthur Conan Doyle, and if this footage seems a little prehistoric, it's because these are scenes from the classic 1925 version.
And then they talk about some other dinosaur movies, the most famous of which being The Lost World. I highly recommend, if you haven't seen that movie, it is absolutely worth seeing. I mean, that movie is now almost 100 years old, and it is incredibly well made and incredibly modern. Now, up until, I think, about 2016, it was almost impossible to watch the entirety of the original movie because so much of it had been lost. But fortunately, looking through archives and other methods, they have actually been able to restore the movie to its original state. So if you buy the Blu-ray of it now, you can actually watch the entirety of the movie. And I would say that it's absolutely worth checking out.
Going back even earlier to the year 1912, cartoonist Winsor McCay created what was to become the first classic cartoon character. And of course, it was a dinosaur. Her name is Gertie, a lovable and very hungry brontosaurus.
I've heard before from certain people, like, fun facts, like this is the first animated short or animated film that was ever made, which isn't true. In fact, Winsor McCay, the animator responsible for Gertie the dinosaur, had made one the year previously called How a Mosquito Operates, which is basically just about a mosquito draining a guy of blood. Apparently, people thought that Winsor McCay had just traced real photographs of animals and that he hadn't animated it himself, because it was so realistic, which is funny to me, but So to prove his detractors wrong, he decided, okay, I'm going to animate something that's not living at all. I'm going to animate a freaking Apatosaurus. And so that's what he did. And he actually got input from museums to make it as accurate as possible. He wanted it to be an educational tool, which is just kind of funny when you watch the finished product, but whatever. The original form of Gertie the dinosaur wasn't like shown in movie theaters. It was actually part of Winsor McCay's vaudeville act, and he would come out on stage with like a whip, and he was like the dinosaur trainer to Gertie. So he would like throw stuff at the screen, and then the short would animate Gertie eating what he had thrown Gertie. And then the big finale of the show is Winsor McCay stepping off stage, and then he would step on to the animated short, as an animated figure, and ride Gertie off. It was a really cool show, really groundbreaking. I mean, Winsor McCay was absolutely fastidious. He timed his own breathing to get the breathing right for Gertie the dinosaur. There's a part where Gertie's on the ground and she has to get up, and he consulted with paleontologists at the National Museum, and they had no idea how dinosaurs would have gotten up. So he draws a flying lizard that flies across the screen to distract you, to take away from the fact that I don't know how Gertie's supposed to get up. I mean, just really incredible stuff and really influential on later animators, particularly Walt Disney. In fact, it was so influential that on an episode of the Disneyland show would actually reenact Winsor McCay's act to show how important it was. So pretty cool stuff, if you ask me.
Now, all those movies are great, but they're not necessarily the best way to learn about dinosaurs. To do that, you should study them scientifically, and that can be just as fascinating.
Oh, good. It can be just as fascinating to learn about them as they actually lived. So they go and visit a paleontologist and ask him to clear up a couple of misconceptions.
What are the big misconceptions about dinosaurs that you'd like to clear up right now?
Well, of course, various. One is that dinosaurs and men were contemporaneous.
Not true.
No, it's not true. They're separated by about 60 million years.
So when I see a caveman chasing with a club a Tyrannosaurus, that's not going to happen?
No, that's a nice fairy tale or myth.
Anything else?
Well, of course, the movies are apt to make the dinosaurs bigger and more ferocious than they were.
Were they docile?
A lot of them probably were. The big brontosaurs, as we call them, the big gigantic dinosaurs that were herbivorous, were probably very docile, just as big grazing animals nowadays are docile. Another advantage of being big is that you can be sure of yourself.
Obviously, the herbivores would have been, pretty docile, probably like most grazing animals. Although I would argue that something like the Ankylosaurus or the Stegosaurus or the Triceratops are probably not things that you would really want to surprise or scare, because I could see them losing their shit and wrecking you.
Fossils of various sizes found together, from babies to adults, indicate that dinosaurs remained together as family units.
There is real good evidence that dinosaurs herded, and this was almost ignored until just very recently, but it's a funny thing. Back in the 1930s, a bunch of big brontosaur trackways were found in Texas, whole herds moving, and their footprints are preserved. And it was published, and it was pretty well known, but everybody ignored it. There's just no doubt that these animals moved in herds, and they were protecting the young. The young were tended to be towards the center.
They're moving in herds. They do move in herds.
And this is a really interesting thing about the field of paleontology, is just how much it's changed in the nearly 40 years since this documentary was first released. At this point, in the 80s, there were still quite a few things that weren't consensus yet in the dinosaur community. And this is what makes it so fun to continue learning about dinosaurs even now. Take Tyrannosaurus rex, for instance. Tyrannosaurus rex went from this gigantic lizard standing on two hind legs, completely upright, and then it went from that to the more correct posture where it's sort of more horizontal on its two legs, but still very much reptilian, still scaled. And then it was thought that, okay, no, actually Tyrannosaurus rex was covered in feathers, like other theropods, right? Since then, we found more integument impressions from Tyrannosaurus rex of various parts of the body. What that means is impressions of like skin, of what's covering up muscle and bone, right? And there hasn't been a whole lot of evidence for feathers around the better part of their body. So now it's believed that maybe they had feathers on top of their head and like quills, but for the most part, they were scaly. Their skin probably looked something like the integument that wraps around birds' feet and legs. So it's amazing how much that's evolved, right? Even in just the last 10, 15 years, there's debate all over the place about these different dinosaurs. I mean, speaking of Tyrannosaurus Rex, there's still a debate going on right now as to whether or not Tyrannosaurus Rex had lips. Not like lips like we have that can move, but like lips that certain other reptiles have, just sort of covering their teeth, right? You watch Jurassic Park and he doesn't have lips. His teeth are just hanging out past his jaw. But more and more the evidence is pointing toward all of this is to say, you should keep studying dinosaurs because there's all kinds of cool stuff that's coming out about them all the time. All right, so now we cut back to Eric and the sort of B plot of this VHS, which is him looking for more dinosaurs, and his quest has brought him to Vernal, Utah. And this is the part of the video that got me so freaking excited as a kid because I lived in Utah. I had been to Vernal. It was cool.
Yeah, this town has gone bonkers for dinos. There are more dinosaurs on the streets of Vernal, Utah than in most museums. Everything is patterned after dinosaurs, from the drugstore to the laundromat, where you could spin dry your Diplodocus.
And so he runs into these dinosaurs that are at Dinosaur Land in Vernal, and then he runs into the mayor of Vernal, which looks like basically every old man in rural Utah that you will ever meet. I love him. And they give him some shit.
Closer to Dinosaur National Monument?
Yes, it's 8 miles down Highway 40 here.
Thanks very much.
And if you hurry, you can see them, feed them.
Great!
And then he gets to check out the big wall at Dinosaur Monument. Eric talks to this ranger about this formation, this rock formation.
And in a sense, those of us who study fossils know dinosaur anatomy. When the first dinosaur skeletons were found in England in the 1800s, they were, of course, in rock. And in fact, they were in stone quarries. And it was the techniques used by stonemasons for working stone that were adapted to taking fossils out of the rock.
Oh, man. Okay, this part too, where you see them chiseling away at the dinosaur bones, that noise, I don't know why, but it always got to me as a kid. I would play this as a kid. I would try to find nails and then a hammer, and I used to love to play at just, delicately hammering bones out of rock. Made me want to be a paleontologist so bad. And then we get this fun little animation.
Just think, with one swing of this hammer, I can unearth creatures that existed 140 million years ago.
Way to go, Eric. Well, I think you're about to get a first-hand look at how all those fossils ended up at Dinosaur National Monument. You see, that whole area was once a river.
Hey, Mr. Allosaurus, I'm over here. Neater, neater, neater. Whoa, surf's up!
During flooding, the bodies and bones of dinosaurs washed downstream and were trapped in sandbars. Over the ages, other rivers and seas came and went, leaving layers of sand and mud. And minerals seeped into the bones, turning them into fossils. Violent changes in the earth brought the fossils back to the surface. Paleontologists carefully dig out the bones and take them back to the museum, where they try to figure out how to put them back together. It's not easy. As a matter of fact, they recently realized they had the wrong head on the Brontosaurus, so they fixed it and changed its name to Apatosaurus.
Over to you, Gare. I'm going to take a break. Ooh, oh.
That's great. I love that just a few minutes ago in this documentary, they were talking to a paleontologist about how man and dinosaur didn't coexist, and then they immediately show man and dinosaur coexisting. Just some mixed messages, that's all I'm saying. Now Gary Oldman is coming back to talk to a paleontologist because, again, they're like, we probably ought to do something, educational. So we talk about the evolution of life, and I'm just going to let this play for just a minute because I need you to understand what this sequence did to me as a kid.
Let's start with the beginning of life. Now, there are some things that we can identify with living forms, such as the jellyfish, which are so obvious at the bottom of the column there. But it isn't until the Silurian, 420-some odd million years ago, that you start getting animals with backbones in any kind of abundance and diversity.
There is something that has always resonated very heavily to me about the story of life and evolution and the countless eons that separate us from the beginning of life all the way to today.
In formal terms, dinosaurs are supposed to be extinct, but for paleontologists like myself and for an awful lot of kids, they're very real and very much alive.
Oh, I love this paleontologist. And I mean, it's so true. Now, I would make the argument that, yeah, dinosaurs are still alive in a very literal sense. Like I said, birds. But yeah, I mean, the non-avian dinosaurs are still very real to me, even now. Well, now Eric's going to a classroom to talk about how kids love dinosaurs.
Why do you think kids love dinosaurs so much?
They can become a dinosaur, is the main thing.
I'm sorry, I have no idea what you just said, ma'am. I was too distracted by the kid that is just absolutely going to town on his nose in the background there.
Well, the first discoveries were made back in 1822, when the first bones were found. Of course, people have been finding dinosaur bones, I think, for hundreds of years.
And then we have one more pit stop with the paleontologist who quickly talks about the history of dinosaurs, you know, Sir Richard Owen coming up with the name Dinosauria. And it's not really all that informative, if I'm being 100% honest. But then we cut to another scene that just got my little kid imagination running wild.
Here in New York's Natural History Museum are some of the best fossil reconstructions. And you know, if you spend some time there and use a little imagination, you just may find yourself with the ghosts of these great beasts.
Combination of the music and looking at these gigantic skeletons mixed with Gary Owen's monologue talking about how you can feel the ghosts of these extinct creatures. I like it when kids shows are like this, where they're okay with letting kids deal with sort of big themes and big emotions. Dealing with the big idea of the eons that separate us from these dinosaurs. You know, trusting that, hey, kids are actually capable of feeling this. When you do let kids feel that lets them connect on a much deeper level. Anyways, Eric comes back, says he found some more dinosaurs, or at least some dinosaur shit.
What is that?
You don't want to know about that.
Gary's disappointed.
Well, that's very interesting, Eric, but I send you on a dinosaur safari, and this is what you bring back?
To which Eric says, oh yeah, hey, look, I also brought this guy.
Don't worry, he's housebroken.
How many has he broken? How long has it been since he's eaten?
Oh, about 70 million years ago.
Maybe we'd better sneak out of here.
Maybe I'll follow you.
What a weird ending to just kind of a weird documentary. And guys, I think this video is becoming unmanageably long, so I'm actually going to split it into 2 parts. So I think I'm going to end it here, and then in the next video we're going to go into dinosaurs. I thank you for watching. Let me know in the comments below what your favorite dinosaur is, and if you haven't already, subscribe to the channel. It actually would help me a great deal. And that way you'll know when part 2 comes up. I'm actually pretty close to being done editing the second part of this. So yeah, guys, love you all. Bye.